The airlock doors groaned as they slid open, spilling harsh white light onto the debris-strewn corridor. Ilara's boots crunched on shattered alloy panels and twisted power conduits, each step echoing through the silent hull of Nova Selene Station. The emergency power grid hummed faintly, a dying heartbeat struggling against the vast emptiness. She paused to catch her breath, pressing a gloved hand to the scorched wall as memory and reality collided. Only 3 solar cycles ago, this place had been a marvel of human ingenuity. Gleaming observation decks, labs humming with quantum drives and holographic schematics, corridors lined with guided light strips that never faltered. Scientists from Earth, Titan, and the abandoned outposts of Europa had worked side by side, unraveling the mysteries of interdimensional travel. Ilara had been its pride, the chief systems engineer whose name was spoken in the same breath as breakthroughs and success. Now she stepped carefully around hulking heaps of twisted metal where the central reactor core once stood. A jagged fissure ran through the bulkhead, its edges still glowing with residual tachyon energy. She drew in a ragged breath, her chest tight with grief. The portal malfunction had ripped through the station like a storm, flattening entire sections in a fury of blue-white light. When the dust settled, 97 souls, her friends, her colleagues, were gone. All that remained were ghosts in the machine. Ilara flicked on her holopad, the small device sputtering to life with a swarm of fractured data streams. She swiped through the logs, alarms blaring, emergency protocols overriding normal operations, one frantic audio clip of her own voice before everything went dark. With a weary thumb, she activated the distress beacon. A tiny red icon blinked, defiantly against the black interface. Signal out. She exhaled, hollow and sharp, knowing full well that Vastra 9's supply runs were months apart. It could be a danger signal for traders skimming the outer perimeter, or the beacon might drift long after she herself was gone. Ahead lay the Wayland Observatory dome, its transparent polymer shell marred by cracked seams and blackout patches. Beyond the dome, Vastra 9's lifeless expanse unfurled. Rolling dunes of rust-colored dust, spired rock outcrops twisted into odd shapes by centuries of gale-force storms, and 2 pale moons hanging in the twilight sky. Ilara's heart clenched at the sight. Every passing windstorm buried more reminders of how small and fragile life could be. She crouched by the control console, stripped of its hollow interface, and set to work pulling wires from an old drone platform. Sparks flew as she soldered makeshift connections, her breath catching at the smell of ozone and burning insulation. Each spark was a promise she refused to abandon. If she could reroute the station's emergency power to the comm array, she might boost the range of her beacon, or at least send a plea directly into Adranan space lanes, where rumors whispered of a kindly fleet patrolling the fringes of human expansion. A low rumble shook the floor plates. Ilara froze, wrench-poised mid-air. The distant engines of her one remaining salvage drone sputtered to life above, weaving through the battered airlock. She exhaled in relief. It was hers, loyal, programmable, and her only companion. She tapped her wrist comm link. DR09. Status? No response beyond the mechanical buzz. She cursed under her breath. Spare parts were scarce, and the stationary power fluctuations had fried the drone's uplink array. It was useless now, more than a glorified tool chest. She stood and stretched her aching back, scanning the corridor for the next supply cache. Her eyes fell on a half-open door labeled B-Deck, Storage. She slid inside. Rows of lockers lined the walls, most smashed open. The contents, spare conduits, data sticks, emergency rations, lay scattered. Ilara's hand hovered over a single sealed crate stamped with the United Earth Coalition emblem. She pried it open, revealing a handful of dehydrated protein packs and air filtering masks. She grabbed them both. Tomorrow she would ration her supplies down to the last crumb. A soft hissing behind her made her whirl around. In the dim light, a shape slumped against the far wall. Another survivor? No. It was a maintenance bot, its sensor eye cracked, power, coils sparking. Ilara knelt beside it and pressed a finger against its chassis. The sobering realization settled over her. There was no one left. Not machine, not man, not alien. She closed her eyes, fighting the wave of despair that threatened to drown her. "Keep going," she whispered to herself. "They can't have died for nothing." Clutching the protein packs and masks against her chest, she headed deeper into the station toward the main comm hub. The path wound through a labyrinth of collapsed beams and plasma weld scars, each corner revealing another testament to the calamity. Rounding a bend, Ilara nearly stumbled over a data core, once the repository of the station's collective research, now a charred monolith. She knelt, brushing ash from its heat-scorched surface, then spiraled her fingers inside the damaged protective casing. If she could salvage the logic strands, she might recover the schematics of the portal engine and determine what went wrong. If a piercing alarm cut through her thoughts, it could only be the last oxygen recycler reaching critical levels. Life support had been on emergency reserve for precisely 72 hours after the breach. The countdown was ticking. She pulled her mask over her mouth and nose, sealing the straps. The air tasted stale, metallic. She had less than 20 standard hours before pressure began to fall. Panic pressed in, but she tamped it down. Panic was a luxury she could ill afford. She reached the entrance to the comm hub, a reinforced blast door fused by the portal's energy surge. With a heave, she engaged the manual override lever. The door groaned open. Inside, the terminal banks lay dormant, screens blank, cables disconnected. But at the center stood the primary transmitter dish. She set to work dragging power conduits from the engineering node she'd just rewired. Sweat beaded on her brow as she ran almost blind cables through floor grills. Each connection she made sparked the consoles back to life. Green status bars flickering, system matrices humming, atmospheric controls stabilizing. The station groaned in protest, but held together like a wounded beast clinging to life. Finally, Ilara activated the transmitter. A low thrum filled the chamber as the dish rotated toward the star-scarred sky. She keyed in the distress coordinates, appended a stream of raw audio pleading for any nearby vessel to respond. The signal flashed green, transmission complete. She exhaled, shoulders sagging. A distant breeze rattled through the ventilation shafts. Ilara's eyes lingered on the viewport above the dish, where Vastra 9's sky had deepened to violet. Somewhere out there, she thought, someone might have heard. But as the minutes ticked by without any sign of acknowledgement, she felt the weight of solitude more keenly than ever. Leaning against the cold metal railing, she let her head fall back. In the silence, only one thought remained. She had nothing left. No home, no family, no future. Yet deep inside, a spark refused to die. As the reactor coils cycled for the night, Ilara silently vowed to fight until her last breath, to uncover the truth behind the disaster, and to prove that even in these ruins of tomorrow, hope could still take root. The station's dim emergency lights cast long, angular shadows across the corridor as Ilara forged onward, every footstep accompanied by the soft crunch of debris. Her respirator mask hissed in time with her heartbeat, each inhalation tasting of recycled air and lingering ozone. Beyond the flickering boundary of the lights, the vastness of unpowered space loomed, an abyss of darkness broken only by the distant sparkle of Vastra 9's moons through broken viewports. Ilara paused at the junction marked D-Deck Biology Labs. The heavy blast door was jaggedly torn open, its seal blown clear off its hinges by the portal's aberrant energy surge. Inside, shattered containment units lay strewn across the floor like crystalline spiderwebs. Tanks that once held genetically engineered specimens, hybrid algae designed for terraforming, microfauna adapted to plasma-rich atmospheres, were split open, their contents evaporated or lost to the vacuum. Ilara's stomach knotted. Even the station's revolutionary bioresearch had been consumed in the blast. She flicked on her wrist torch and crept in, eyes searching for spare parts she might salvage. Amongst the detritus, she spied a single intact biosensor module. its compact circuitry still intact. A potential key to rerouting power surges away from the comm hub. Carefully, she lifted it, pressing a gloved palm over its delicate diodes to keep them from shattering. As she stood, the echo of her own movement startled her, an abrupt clang, as if metal had scraped against metal somewhere deep in the lab. Ilara froze. Every nerve in her body prickled. Alone in this steel tomb, she had grown accustomed to solitude, and yet every unexpected sound sent adrenaline coursing. Her pulse rattled in her ears louder than any distant rumble. She held her breath, listening. The corridor was silent again, save for the distant hum of the dying emergency grid. She exhaled, heart easing. The noise had likely been a loose panel shifting. Gravity, weakened supports, who knew? She squared her shoulders and pressed on. The corridor beyond D-deck sloped downward, as if the station's architecture itself had fractured under stress. The lights here pulsed irregularly, and the walls bore deep scorch marks. At the turn leading to the main power conduit chamber, Ilara halted. The hatch door was scorched shut, hinges melted, weld seams cracked like lightning bolts. She knelt and retrieved her plasma torch tool from her belt, igniting its soft blue flame. Hand steady despite her fraying nerves, she cut through the mangled metal. Each second stretched as sparks flew, the torch flame reflecting in her goggles. When the makeshift barrier finally gave way, she pried it open with a grunt. Inside waited an eerie stillness. 3 dormant gravity dampeners stood like toppled statues, their coils dark. The air smelled of burnt electronics and cold vacuum. Ilara advanced to the central conduit, flipped the manual power lock, and adjusted the biosensor module she had salvaged. The old coils crackled as they accepted the new circuitry. An improvisation, but sound in theory. She backed away, heart racing in anticipation. In the flicker of emergency lights, the conduit sparked to life with a low roar. The station groaned, metal plates vibrating underfoot as the emergency grid surged to accommodate the new load. Far off, a door slammed somewhere, likely a pressure change jettisoning a breached compartment. Ilara clicked her comm link. Status check. Power reroute. Successful. She tapped through the interface, noting a gradual stabilization of power flow. Atmospherics, 24% nominal. Comms, humidifier control offline. Life support pinch point in 16 hours. 16 hours. Not long, but better than before. She allowed herself a moment to relish the small victory. Even as the corridor trembled, she let a flicker of hope ignite. Yet with renewed power came renewed anxiety. She needed to see to the data cores. If she could recover the station archive, she might find log snippets revealing the portal's failure sequence. And if she understood the fault, maybe she could repair, or at least disable safely, the remaining interdimensional drive before it triggered another catastrophe. The path to the archive took her through the central nexus, a chamber designed, not for living creatures but for the station's neural mainframe. Gigantic data crystals mounted on hexagonal racks lined the walls. Each one held terabytes of quantum-encoded research. In normal operation, maintenance bots would glide along magnetic tracks, cleaning and recalibrating sensors. Now, the tracks were twisted, and every rack bore scars of explosive force. Ilara's hand hovered over a cracked data crystal. Its protective casing was breached, but the stabilizer crystals still glowed faintly. She wrestled it free from its rack, then cradled it like a wounded animal. One by one, she retrieved half a dozen more. Sweat beaded under her helmet. Even a single misstep could fracture the cores beyond salvage. As she gathered the last crystal, the lights flickered violently. The station pitched to one side, a tremor that threw Ilara off balance. She stumbled, planting a hand on a console. Alarms blared, high-pitched shrieks that set her teeth on edge. Warning! Structural integrity compromised. Bulkhead breach. Imminent. The artificial voice echoed through broken speakers. Ilara's heart lurched. She scrambled to her feet, clutching the crystals. The floor shuddered again, and a distant roar sounded, metal ripping apart. She turned to run, but froze. A fissure had opened along the floor. yawning like the maw of a creature. Through the crack she could see the blackness of the planet's surface far below. One wrong step and she would fall into oblivion. Adrenaline surged. She hugged the wall, edging past the fissure. Sparks flew from exposed wires overhead, some raining down in miniature fireworks. A conduit spewed coolant fluid, sizzling as it met the station's heated floor. Alara moved with deliberate speed, every muscle taut. She nearly dropped a precious data crystal when the floor tremored again, but she caught it just in time. TD. Last, the corridor straightened. She burst into the dim glow of the archive vestibule. The blast doors were fused shut, but a small maintenance hatch, normally used for emergency server access, hung ajar. Alara squeezed through, crystals clutched under one arm. Inside, racks of backup drives lined a cramped cavity. She paused only to activate the internal power node, then slid each crystal into the extractor port. The drives whirred, drawing quantum, data from the overhead crystals. Information flooded her holopad, time-stamped logs, error codes, sensor readings. She forwarded the most critical files to a secure mini-disk she wore on her belt. Primary portal core resonance spike at 0317, local time. Secondary failsafe override offline for maintenance. Energy feedback loop uncontrolled for 47 seconds. She scowled at the readout. Someone had disabled the failsafe, deliberately. A fresh wave of panic slammed into her. If the failure had been no accident, there might be a saboteur in Idrenon, space lanes, or worse, someone still on station hiding in the darkness. She tightened her grip on the mini-disc. The truth was out there, buried in these corrupted files, and it would take every ounce of her ingenuity to uncover it. Alara powered down the extractor and rose, chest heaving. She slotted the mini-disc into her belt pouch. The comm panels crackled. To life, and a single line scrolled across the screen. Identified signal. Unregistered vessel approaching. Her blood froze. Outside, through a narrow viewport, she could make out a slick, angular silhouette drifting into view. Alara's pulse thundered in her ears as the indicator blinked. Unregistered vessel approaching, but the comm panels gave no further details. She raced back through the fractured corridors, each step tripping over twisted conduits and broken alloy plates. The station groaned around her, the lighting grid pulsing with the effort of keeping systems alive. With every section she passed, the hum of external engines grew louder, resonating through the bulkheads like a warning. She emerged into the observation gallery, heart pounding so fiercely she feared it might burst through her ribcage. Beyond, the cracked viewport, a sleek craft drifted into view. Its hull smooth, unmarred by the corrosion and maintenance scars familiar on human freighters. Bioluminescent panels ran along its dorsal spine, shifting from deep indigo to pale green in slow, rhythmic waves. Underneath, no registration numbers glowed, only an abstract spiral, intertwined with glyphs that pulsed faintly. Alara swallowed, hard. Pirate vessels and slavers bore jagged plating and weapon turrets. Research ships were marked by the United Earth Coalition crest. This was neither. Her hands shook as she keyed the comm. "This is Nova Selene Station. Identify yourself." Static, crackled. Then a voice calm and resonant spoke in measured tones. Yet through her jury-rigged translator it came clear. "You have invited us with your beacon. Fear not, human engineer. I am Kale Shan of the Idronan fleet. We respond to distress calls without prejudice." Her breath caught. Idronans, their patrols skirted the frontier to safeguard fledgling colonies, but only whispered rumors of their presence ever reached human ears. They were said to be diplomats and healers, ancient wanderers who carried the galaxy's wounds in their hearts. Alara's rational mind urged caution, but in her chest a fragile spark of hope flared. She keyed again, voice tentative. "Why help me? My station is doomed. Supplies are months away." A pause, then Kaelshan's voice. "All life is precious. Abandon this station with me and you shall live to tell its story." Alara's knees threatened to buckle. She had dreamed of rescue. She had planned for self-extraction using the salvage drone. But now, faced with a living emissary of an alien fleet, The choice felt impossible. With a trembling hand, she gathered her holopad and data disk, the only proof of the sabotage she had uncovered, and slipped them into her belt. The salvaged biosensor and quantum cores she'd recovered stood ready in her pack. Outside, the airlock's hatch disengaged with a hiss that rattled the supports. Ilara exhaled and steeled herself. She slid open the bulkhead door, plasma torch still strapped to her belt. Smoke curled from scorched panels, and red warning lights cast twisted shadows on the walls. She followed the glow to the landing pad. The Adrenaline craft's ramp descended in a span of seconds, metal folding silently to form a ramp of crystalline alloy. The air within the hangar shifted, charged with static. Ilara's chest tightened as she approached the ramp's foot. The figure that stepped onto the pad was tall, over 2 meters, and slender, with limbs that moved like dancing shadows. His skin was the deep blue of a glacial ocean, and faint patterns of silver flecks traced along his cheekbones. His eyes, liquid pools of mercury, regarded her with calm intensity. He wore a robe of translucent fabric that shimmered with every subtle movement as though woven from starlight. "Ilara of Nova Selene," he said, voice soft but resonant. "You have my gratitude for signaling. I am Kyle Shan." She nodded, breath coming in short gasps. "Kyle Shan, why come yourself? Why not send a salvage vessel?" He inclined his head. "I did not wish to risk you. My role is to assess, and to assist." He gestured to the wrecked station. "I have scanned your power grid and life support status. You operate on emergency reserves of 20 hours. After that, the station will collapse." Ilara pressed her hand against a scorch-marked strut. "I know. I hope to fix the comm array first, then figure out how to stabilize the portal core." Kyle Shan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The portal core remains unstable. I request your research logs, so I might help you. Understand the fault. In exchange, I offer safe passage." She hesitated. He could confiscate her data, leave her stranded on Adrana Prime. But she saw in his eyes something akin to the raw determination she felt when she repaired the power conduits. Oh, spark of empathy. Carefully, she unsealed the mini-disc and held it out. "All I have left of my colleague's work." He accepted it gently, marveling at the small cylinder. "Thank you." He turned, beckoning her aboard. "Let us find truth together." Ilara took a final look at the station, the scene of so much devastation and so many unanswered questions. Despite the pain it held, it was hers, a testament to human ambition, and a grave warning of its dangers. Her hand brushed the plasma torch at her side, bittersweet. But Kyle Shan was right. She needed an ally. With one last breath, she stepped onto the ramp. The craft's interior was cool and softly lit, consoles alive with flowing glyphs. Kyle Shan guided her to a recessed seat that molded to her form and offered a headrest of gentle, vibrating coils. As the ramp lifted and the engines hummed, Ilara watched Nova Selene Station recede into the violet sky. Even as the station slipped from view, a new chapter unfurled before her, one of cross-cultural collaboration, of unraveling cosmic mysteries, and of a chance, however slim, to transform her despair into hope. Across the silent gulf of space, the Adranan vessel set a course for secrets yet untold, carrying with it the woman who had been left with nothing, until a stranger's compassion wrapped her in its embrace. The Adranan vessel droned through the void with uncanny silence, its bioluminescent hull panels pulsing in gentle rhythm. Ilara found herself drifting between curiosity and cautious awe as she stepped into the ship's central observatory. The room's domed ceiling framed a panorama of stars streaked by distant nebulae, far different from the battered walls of Nova Selene. Here, every surface gleamed with purpose, every console hummed its own soft melody. Kyle Shan guided her to a workstation carved from a single piece of iridescent alloy. Glyphic interfaces glowed as he slid the stolen mini-disc into a receptacle. "Your colleague's data, it is unlike anything I've seen," he said. Patterns of color rippled along his sleeves as he spoke. Their portal design attempted to bind interdimensional resonance with pure tachyon flux. Elegant but perilously unstable without fail-safe matrices. Ilara exhaled, relief and embarrassment mingling. They were brilliant, but overconfident. Maintenance protocols were bypassed in the rush for a breakthrough. She paused. I should have insisted on delaying the core test until we'd finished the secondary stabilizer. Her fingers traced a non-existent seam on the console. Kael Shan regarded her in thoughtful silence. Then he placed a long-fingered hand on her shoulder, an Idranan gesture of reassurance. Hindsight dims the light of what might have been. You did all you could under impossible circumstances. His touch was gentle but carried weight, a reassurance that mistakes did not define her. Ilara nodded, swallowing the knot in her throat. In that moment, trust formed, a shard of something new and fragile. Together, they pored over the logs. As Kael Shan translated xenocybernetic error codes, Ilara worked her way through Idranan schematics of temporal resonance dampeners. Their languages, one digital, one symphonic, began to mesh. Where she saw runaway feedback loops, he saw harmonic imbalances. Where he saw unanchored tachyon vortices, she saw opportunities for venting excess energy into secondary conduits. Piece by piece, their combined expertise sketched the blueprint for a safe disassembly of the Nova Selene portal core. Evenings aboard the Idranan ship passed in gentle routines. After hours of analysis, Kael Shan led Ilara to the hydroponic atrium, a spherical garden of floating planters bathed in violet light. Strange, spiral-leafed vines curled toward the glass dome overhead. The air smelled faintly of ionized moisture and sweet pollen. Ilara knelt beside a planter and inhaled deeply. We cultivate these vines to purify our water and nourish the crew, Kael Shan explained. He handed her a small bioluminescent fruit, a gentle orb of living circuitry. Try it. Unsure, she bit through its delicate membrane. A rush of cool sweetness filled her mouth, followed by a subtle crackle of energy. She looked up at him, eyes wide. Remarkable. Kael Shan smiled. Our cultures differ in many ways, but we share a curiosity for life's resilience. He sat beside her and gestured to the floating planters which drifted in concentric orbits. On Idrana Prime, we believe knowledge grows like these vines. Each new branch strengthens the whole. Ilara felt the weight of isolation ease. In his presence, the station's ruins felt farther away. She realized she'd been holding her breath for weeks, waiting, grieving, fearing. Here, comfort and purpose intertwined. It had been so long since she'd felt more than mere survival. One night, as the ship glided past a cluster of phosphorescent gas clouds, Kael Shan paused. At her door. I wish to show you something, he said softly. They entered a small chamber lined with shimmering conduits. In the center hovered a translucent orb, the distilled essence of a collapsed star, contained by Idranan quantum lattices. This is the heart of Gyasa, he explained, a relic from our oldest temples. It symbolizes unity between light and darkness, creation and entropy. The orb pulsed with inner light, casting dancing reflections on their faces. Ilara's heart clenched at the sight. Destruction had taken so much from her. Yet here was a symbol of balance, of hope, bound to sacrifice. It's beautiful, she whispered. Kael Shan nodded. It reminds us that even in the void there is potential for renewal. We must accept our losses but not be defined by them. She looked at him, words catching in her throat. You've given me purpose again. She swallowed. I don't know how to thank you. He stepped closer, eyebrow arching in what humans would call a smile. Share your journey. Let us forge a path forward. Together. Their bond, still fragile as a newly sprung filament, glowed brighter in that chamber. Ilara understood then that trust was not merely an agreement of convenience, but a willingness to share vulnerabilities. In the following days, they began preparations for returning to Nova Selene. Ilara meticulously drafted the dismantling plan, weaving Idranan lattice stabilizers into her schematics. Kaelshan trained an Idranan repair crew in human engineering protocols, and in turn, Ilara absorbed Idranan techniques for energy modulation. They worked side by side, adjusting conduits and calibrating resonance dampeners in the ship's testing bay, each successful test reinforcing their alliance. As Chapter 4 closed, Ilara stood at the airlock with Kaelshan, watching the station loom ahead, a battered testament to human ambition and error. In her hand she held a coiled length of Idranan fiber optics, and in her heart, a newfound conviction that through shared understanding, they could turn ruins into hope. The final sequence of repairs lay before them, but for the first time since the disaster, she felt ready. Not alone, but carried by the fragments of trust they'd forged, enough to face the darkness together. The approach to Nova Selene Station was surreal. Through the reinforced viewport of the Idranan landing bay, Ilara watched the battered hulk drift against the violet backdrop of Vastra 9. Loose modules and twisted framework spun slowly, caught in the planet's weak gravity. Yet in its silent ruin, hope glimmered, an echo of the lives once lost, now honored by the promise of renewal. Kaelshan stood beside her, hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Shall we begin?" he asked. His voice carried the calm certainty of one who had faced the void and returned unbroken. Ilara nodded, steeling herself. Together they led a mixed crew of Idranan engineers and a few volatile human drones she had reactivated. Their task, to dismantle the portal core, neutralize its residual tachyon flux, and reconfigure the station's power grid to sustain basic life support until supply runs could resume. Each step followed the hybrid schematics they had developed. Idranan, lattice stabilizers entwined with human conduit arrays. A fusion of two cultures' ingenuity. Inside the old reactor chamber, the air crackled with displaced energy. Ilara guided the insertion of the last stabilizer into the core's interface port. As the unit clicked into place, a low hum swelled to a pure tone. The glowing tachyon coils dimmed, then blinked out entirely. Around them, the station's bulkheads ceased their moan of strain, lighting returned to steady green, and the emergency grid shifted to a sustainable throughput. "We did it," Ilara breathed, stepping back to let Kaelshan initiate the shutdown sequence. On her wrist comlink, atmospheric levels climbed toward nominal. Somewhere, a biosensor blinked back to life. She closed her eyes, letting the moment wash over her, a mixture of triumph, relief, and sorrow for what had been lost. In the corridor beyond, the Idranan crew unfurled bio-ribbons along damaged conduits, weaving a living network that would repair wiring over time. Ilara watched as vines from the ship's hydroponic atrium took root in conduit sheaths, their gentle glow infusing the station's corridors with a new, organic light. At last, they returned to the landing bay. The station's viewports now revealed a gentler landscape, wind-sculpted dunes under twin moons no longer forbidding but beckoning with quiet resilience. Ilara turned to Kaelshan, awe and gratitude shining in her eyes. "You wrapped me in your arms when I had nothing," she said softly. "You showed me that even ruins can be transformed." Kaelshan inclined his head, his silver liquid, eyes reflecting the twin moons. "You taught me that compassion and courage know no species. Together, we have given this place a second chance." As they exchanged that silent vow, the Idranan ship's engines glowed to life behind them. Soon, it would depart, carrying Ilara's research to Idrana Prime for preservation, and sending technicians back with new supplies and reinforcements. Nova Selene would live again, not as a monument to tragedy but as a bridge between worlds. Ilara stepped onto the observation deck one last time. Light from the repaired reactor danced across the domed ceiling. She placed a hand on the viewport, feeling the hum beneath her fingertips. Somewhere in the vastness beyond, faint Idranan signals pulsed in gratitude. Closer, her own heart beat in harmonious rhythm. She was no longer alone. In the soft glow of interwoven technology and living crystal vines, Ilara let herself smile. A new chapter of human Idrinan friendship was beginning, and with it the promise that even the darkest echoes of the past could become the seed of tomorrow's hope.